Alright, what's up guys? In today's video, we're going to be taking an in-depth look at the MP5, going over all the barrels, the foregrips, as well as some of the unique attachments about the gun. We're going to be talking about what is the best class setup to use with the MP5 by itself. We're going to be talking about if you just run the MP5 on its own, what are the best attachments for it, and then obviously a class setup for what is the best to run as an SMG only setup to stack with that assault rifle. It does have a lot of unique stats and a lot of unique attachments. We're going to talk about all those attachments, how they affect your recoil, how they affect your overall stats, and obviously breaking down what I think is the best class setup for it. So first and foremost, I want to tell you guys what is actually the best barrel to use, because there's only one barrel I recommend at all to use on this gun. That is the monolithic integral suppressor. What you're going to get is about a 10% slower aim down sight time, which is not that big. You're going to get 15% more range. So this is the only barrel besides the regular monolithic suppressor that's going to give you more range, and obviously it's going to give you the most range possible. You also get increased bullet velocity, which I find helps out a lot, especially on an SMG, and you only get a lower aim down sight time. If you compare that to the regular monolithic suppressor, it's going to have the same aim down sight time with about half the increase in range, which is not that big a difference, but that regular monolithic suppressor does have a worse aim walking steadiness, which is one of the worst things about the MP5, so I don't recommend using it at all. As far as talking about the other three barrels, you have the subsonic, the FSS Mini, and the FSS Lite. The Lite is a very simple answer. You will 100% not notice the increase in your overall aim down sight time. You also get a 10% less range. In exchange, you get a slightly faster movement speed, which you already have an SMG. So the positives are not even noticeable. The negatives is to get less range on a gun that already has bad range. So I 100% recommend avoiding this barrel. The subsonic barrel, probably the biggest, most clickbait barrel you guys will find. You guys probably take a look at it, you see it only has one con for 4 positives, and that is where you are misled. You do get a silencer, but that con, which is the bullet velocity, is 40% less range. If you put the subsonic suppressor on, you're probably better using your fists with that 40% less range than using the MP5 itself. You get a 10% faster aim down sight time, which is minimal, compared to getting 40% less range. You also get a slightly worse movement speed in exchange to get invisible bullets and obviously no enemy skulls. So I 100% recommend this. Is probably the worst attachment in the game. 40% less range on a gun that sucks in range is probably the worst thing you can do to a gun. As far as the FSS Mini, you get a 15% faster aim down sight time. So for the reason alone that it gets the fastest aim down sight time, I definitely would recommend it. Only 20% less range. You also get a 2% faster movement speed with 5% faster stray speed. So this is probably the second best barrel due to the fact that you get the biggest improvements in those stats that it actually goes for. It does get a slightly worse recoil, which you guys can see on the screen right now. It is a little bit worse, but you can counter it by stacking some of the grips on there. And as far as talking about the overall grips, we're going to take a look at the rubberized, the compensator, the Merc, the Commando, and the Ranger. You guys can see on the screen how the difference between the grips on the far left will be default. You guys can see the grips. The biggest thing you will take a note here is the Commando gave you less recoil while also giving you a more stable recoil. It also gives you better idle sway, which is the worst thing about the MP5. So everything about this attachment counters the negatives of the MP5. I definitely recommend this as my #1 attachment. All it does is make your movement speed worse, which you have an SMG, which is not really noticeable. The Merc foregrip, it says it gives you better hipfire spread. It's so minimal you probably won't even notice it. It also does give you less recoil and a little bit more stable recoil. You get the same negative and aim down sight time as the Ranger, but you get a slightly faster stray speed. So I'm going to recommend the Merc as my #2. The Ranger gets less recoil. It does have a very good recoil pattern, but the fact that your stray speed goes down by so much, I've actually completely stopped using this. So I definitely would recommend it as a pretty good attachment, only if it's stacked with something that's also going to help you with your idle sway, which is the biggest thing it has over the Merc. As far as the compensator, you're going to get the least amount of recoil possible, but you can see those bullets are pretty hard to hit. It kicks left, and it kicks right, then it kicks all the way to the moon. This is the least stable recoil pattern I've seen on a weapon. I 100% recommend avoiding this attachment completely. And as far as the rubberized, I end up testing it to see if it does stack. It usually stacks best with long barrels. I tried to see if it would stack with the Ranger or the Merc. It didn't do that at all. It also makes your idle sway worse, which the MP5 sucks at. So I 100% recommend avoiding using the rubberized at all. It barely helps, and it makes the gun worse where it's the worst. So I don't recommend using it at all. As far as about those last few attachments, the no stock attachment is going to be about 4% faster movement speed, 10% faster ADS. It also gives you a very, very good improvement to your overall hip fire, probably the best I've seen yet. You do get a slightly worse vertical recoil. It's also a little bit less stable, which is definitely going to stack best with the Commando foregrip, which makes your movement speed worse, which this proves. Basically, they stack excellent together. Those are the two things we recommend together in the best class setup. The tack laser improves your aim down sight time about 15%. You also get a better idle sway and a better walking steadiness. Three things that the MP5 definitely needs. I'm 100% going to recommend this. The CQC stock is definitely probably pretty good. I would definitely rank it third. You probably use the tack laser or the no stock first because you get 15% faster aim down sight time, but a worse idle sway, which is what's the worst about the MP5. So I don't really recommend it, but it's definitely pretty good if you want something that's going to improve your aim down sight time. And as far as the stipple grip, similar to the FSS Lite, the aim down sight time improvement is very minimal. Probably won't notice. You also get a worse idle sway for a 25% faster sprint out. So it's definitely pretty good. But if you want to get the best improvement with the stipple grip, you're going to have to stack it with an attachment like the tack laser, the Commando, or the Ranger, something that improves your idle sway, which is obviously going to counter what the stipple grip does. So, and the last attachment we're going to be taking a look at is the 10mm ammo. This is an attachment that basically helps your overall range. It gets rid of your fourth damage range drop off, which is normally your damage range drop off with that fourth range of about 19. With this, it's going to make your lowest damage being 22, which is going to help increase the overall damage of the MP5. Your ranges are going to be switched to 14 meters and then 34 meters, so it's going to give you a pretty good increase in your range, about 20% more. And if you take that 14 to 34 damage range, you now do 25 damage, so you also get an increase your overall damage at those ranges. It also does have a slightly worse recoil, which you guys can see on the screen. So if you're asking my honest opinion, this is going to be very good if you use the gun by itself. As far as using the MP5 as an SMG stacked with an AR, you want the most ammo possible. So if you're running the MP5 as a gun on its own, I would definitely recommend the 10mm ammo. It definitely really does help the MP5 out a lot. It helps increase that damage and that range, which is something you're not really going to find in an SMG attachment. So I definitely 100% recommend it. So my best class setup that I personally use on the MP5, I'm going to be using that monolithic integral suppressor. Obviously, like I said, it's the best barrel. We're going to be stacking it with the Commando foregrip. We're going to be using the 45 round mag, which is going to give us the most ammo possible. Stacking with the granulated grip tape. We are also going to be using the no stock attachment. This is going to give us the best movement speed possible. We're also going to get a very good increase to our accuracy. This is if you're using the gun to be stacked with an assault rifle. If you're using the gun on its own, I would recommend switching out that no stock attachment probably for the tack laser. It's going to help your idle sway, your overall accuracy. It's going to basically make your gun a little bit better to be able to hit your shots to try and get those kills. But like I said, we're using the SMG style class setup. You want the fastest possible gun because you're purely using it for rushing. So there's only one difference I recommend as far as swapping between the two. We'll be switching from the tack laser to the no stock. That's the only difference between the two class setups. So hopefully you guys enjoyed today's video. Hopefully you guys learned something new that helps you guys pick the best possible MP5 class setup. If there's any guns you guys want me to cover in the next in-depth video, make sure you guys leave it down in the comment section below. If you guys have not yet, make sure you guys do like the video. It greatly helps us out. Also subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. And make sure you guys use code Trapgod on all of your SCUF and GFUEL purchases. The best and only code to use. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you guys in the next one.